going on, you guys? It is your boy, the American F1 fan, Eric Ringle here. And yes, we are only 2 races away from the end of the season. We have Las Vegas coming up this weekend, and then the finale in Abu Dhabi. But I thought, why not do a tier list and kind of grade out each and every team throughout the entire Formula One grid, give my thoughts a little bit about each team and where I have them graded. I don't have any funny titles. Here in the United States, we go A, B, C, D, or F for failing. So we'll go through those, and we'll go through each team, just kind of running through, what I thought of them throughout the season. So starting off with Alfa Romeo, this is a team that is still in the hunt for a 7th position in the World Constructor standings. Could finish dead last, depending on how these last 2 races go. But I feel like they, even though they're going to potentially finish 7th on the grid this season, I feel like that Valtteri has taken a huge step back compared to last season. And Guan Yu Zhou's just kind of stayed stagnant with the team. And he's not gotten better, but he's not gotten worse. And there's been definitely times throughout the season that Guan Yu Zhou has produced better than Valtteri. But I still feel like this is a team that, yes, they're going to be switching to Audi in a couple of years. I believe Alfa Romeo as a title sponsor will be leaving next season. This was a season that, Guan Yu Zhou really needed to step up. Now, granted, he's got the seat for next season alongside Valtteri. I really feel like this should have been an opportunity for Theo Pourchaire to step in and potentially take one of these 2 driver seats. Valtteri probably deserved to stay with the team just a little bit more. We've given Guan Yu Zhou now, was his 2nd full season, and yes, while we have seen some improvements, it's not enough compared to what we know Theo Pourchaire has been able to do in Formula 2 and at times been able to do in practice sessions in Formula 1. So if I was going to grade Alfa Romeo, I wouldn't call it a complete failure this season in my books. I would say they're pretty close, but I'm going to give them a D. Next on the list, we've got Alpha Tauri. And this, I think, is I would say, one of my surprises of this season. Now, everything looked bleak in the early going of the season when Nick de Vries was just, he couldn't get his shit together, and you could see on the team that, they wanted to give him every opportunity, which I'm of the essence that Liam Lawson should have been at least given the full season before they would have, or not Liam Lawson, sorry, Nick de Vries. Nick de Vries should have gotten the seat for the whole season, and then, if he didn't improve throughout the season, then yeah, you could have ditched him. Then you had the likes of Daniel Ricciardo come into the team, who literally first or second race out breaks his hand, has to sit out races. Liam Lawson jumps right into that seat and almost immediately is right at home, helping the team score points. Did really, really well for him. Yuki's taken another big step forward, I think, this year and kind of proving he can be a leader of the team. He still has his anger issues from time to time, but, I think with any driver, if you didn't see those anger issues, you would be kind of worried whether or not they didn't care. Now, sometimes they do step overboard for Yuki, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I think he's got the right heart for the team. To potentially lead them. Daniel will be back in the seat alongside him next season, but they've been able to, yes, they're 9th in the standings, but now they're in that fight for 7th. I would have said that had they, not scored any points here recently, we wouldn't have seen the form that we've seen from Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson. I think as a team, they would have been failing. I would say that they're, especially in the second half of the season, I would definitely give AlphaTauri a C. I think they've really shown exactly what that car has, and what it's going to have going into the 2024 season. We've seen some real glimpses that AlphaTauri could, eventually become a real mid-fighting team. Moving on, we've got Alpine, and I really had high hopes for Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly and their partnership at Alpine, and for the most part, they've done relatively well. They've had some hiccups. Australia is the biggest one that comes to mind, but I feel like that Alpine should have been taking another big step forward this season. They were in that fight for fourth last season in the constructor standings alongside Alpine, and McLaren has made those leaps and strides to get in that top four, whereas Alpine has at moments looked like they have fallen away from that fourth spot and now are fighting for fifth, sixth, the bottom half of the world constructor standings. And yes, we've seen some good results for them, but it's nothing near what we've seen from Alpine in the past. And going into this season, this needed to be a big rebound season for Alpine, losing Fernando Alonso in the offseason, and with all the reliability troubles that they had last year, it was really needing to be a big rebound year for them, and they really needed to push for that fourth spot. Now Aston Martin has overtaken them. McLaren has basically left them in the dust. Alpine's just kind of fighting for that the second half of the standings. And to me, it's not, I would say that that's a huge failure in my book. That's an F, all day, every day. The fact that Alpine has not been at least in the conversation for, best of, what we've always considered best of the rest, which is, better than the Red Bulls, Ferraris, and Mercedes. Now that they're not even in that conversation, that is to me a huge failure on Alpine's part. Next up is Aston Martin. Now, this is a weird team to grade for me because on one hand, I could consider them, potentially up towards the top or down a little bit lower, but it's all depending on the driver because while yes, Lance Stroll has scored some decent points finishes this year, it's nothing compared to what Fernando Alonso was able to do at the very beginning of the season. Constantly getting podium positions for Aston Martin while Lance Stroll was kind of, midfield, just fighting for the edge of the points. But then it almost seemed like when they brought updates to the car, like, it was a backwards movement for the team. And ever since then, this team has dropped so far off that, even Fernando at times, Lance has gotten totally frustrated. I think his mind is almost completely out of Formula One, even though he's still in the sport. I feel like he's kind of got one foot out the door and the other foot is just ready to follow behind it. If things don't progressively get better. Fernando, you can tell, is trying hard and is really trying to, improve the team's standings on the grid. Now, like I said, first half of the season, I would have said B, probably A. I would have honestly given the team an A with where they, were able to get that car, at the beginning of the season. But then, like I said, the second half of the season has been an absolute train wreck for Aston Martin. So they're going to be just an average team. And I would honestly, with AlphaTauri finishing the way that they have towards the end of the season and the way Aston Martin's been kind of looking, I would say I'm going to put Aston Martin ahead of AlphaTauri if it'll take. There we go. We'll do it. There we go. Aston Martin, we'll put them ahead of AlphaTauri for now. I'll definitely keep thinking about that, but I just think that Aston Martin is just another average team on the grid that has really disappointed their fans, and I think, the drivers that are with the team. So next up, we've got Ferrari. We had the addition of Fred Vasseur, the new team principal to Ferrari, but we still seem like we still have glimpses of the old Ferrari and the silly strategy calls. And granted, the car is really good in qualifying trim. Like, they really qualify well. when it gets to the race, that car is absolutely nowhere. We've seen them, fighting for middle of the points to, barely making top 10. And it's been really disappointing for a Ferrari team that was really expected to make a huge jump forward going into this season, being able to bring updates to the car that Red Bull wasn't going to be able to do this year with the penalties that they incurred from going over the cost cap last season. And Ferrari just didn't make that jump that I think most people expected them to make. And it's really sad to see. And, Charles Leclerc doesn't deserve it. He's really put on good performances when he can. Carlos Sainz doesn't deserve it either. I mean, he is one hell of a driver. And they're lucky that they have both these guys who could potentially be number ones, at any team on the grid, both of them. And, you've got them both at Ferrari, and you're just not giving them the machinery to be able to take the fight to a Red Bull, a Mercedes, a McLaren. Like, you're just not giving them that car. And to me, that, it's not necessarily a total failure because, we've seen glimpses of what the car can do in race trim, but I would definitely have to put them in I'm going to put them in the C category ahead of, I'm going to put AlphaTauri ahead of Aston Martin. I just think AlphaTauri has shown a lot in this later half of the season, whereas Aston Martin has totally fallen off the table. But Ferrari is just another one of those average teams right now with just putting up very average performances when it was, when we all felt like Ferrari was going to make that step this year to really challenge Red Bull for a driver's title and for the constructor's title. Next up on my list, it's my team, the Haas Formula One team, and I've got to say, I'm going to give the grade now. It's a big fat F for me, and they're way behind Alpine. It's amazing to me that Haas, going into this season, they were expected to, and at testing, they were showing that the signs of the car that they were going in the right direction. They were, middle of the field, sometimes top of the, grid during testing. And so a lot of Haas fans were really starting to buzz about the potential that this car was going to, really make that leap forward, especially with Nico Hülkenberg coming to the team and Kevin Magnussen having his second season with the team. And it just absolutely failed. I love Gunther to death, but I'm starting to wonder if it's not time to maybe make a change there. Like I said, I love Gunther to death, but it just doesn't seem like, to me, the team is responding in a way, and it's more I would say more the design team and everybody that kind of Gunther is in charge in that's not the drivers, where like this car should be continually improving throughout the season. And we literally had to wait till the Circuit of the Americas to basically get any kind of like real update to the car. And for all that's worth, the update that they brought at Austin has been a total failure. And even Gunther has said it, Kevin said it, Nico, the drivers have kind of alluded to it, but Gunther has pretty much said that this is not exactly the way we're going to be going for 2024. And it's just been really sad. And Haas has really failed not only the team, not only the drivers, but they failed the fans that, kind of wanted to see that big jump from Haas this season. Next up on the list, we've got McLaren. And I could not grade these guys any quicker than an A. Almost, if I would have made a spot for A+, I'd have given it to them. Especially with where we saw McLaren at the first, several races of the season, we thought, man, McLaren really fell off from last season, but, they made the updates they needed to make this season, and they have absolutely blown it out of the water. They're chasing down top 3. They could have been chasing down top 2 had they started off the season the way they needed to, But McLaren has made the jump. They are now fighting for for a constructors championship in my eyes. And I do have to say, in my prediction video at the beginning of the season, I felt like maybe the pressure that was going to be thrusted onto Oscar Piastri this season was going to maybe be a little too much for him this year. And I've got to say, I was totally wrong about him, in that regards. And I feel like Oscar has not only made the jump he needed to, but he has literally, been there in the fight with Lando Norris, has really shown the fight to Red Bull. And I'm really, really interested going into 2024 what McLaren is going to be able to do, with a little bit older of an Oscar Piastri and another year older of Lando Norris, and the car, the way it's been performing, what they're going to be able to accomplish going into 2024 season. But I had to say, McLaren, obviously, great job to you guys. So next up, the Mercedes-AMG Petronas team. This is one of those ones that's really hard to grade because, or it's another one that's really hard to grade, is because it seems like they've made the step forward that they needed to going into this later half of the season with the updates that they've brought. They're making good strides, and we've seen it here recently. Brazil, I feel like was a little bit more of an outlier. I feel like I think they had some more like setup issues when it came to Brazil, more than it was the updates to the car. But we've seen them progressively get better throughout the season. Now, they're not fighting for wins yet against Red Bull. That's not happening yet. But they took the fight to Ferrari, have beaten them. They took the fight to Aston Martin. They've now passed them. They're the second best team on the grid. Arguably the second best team. I could say McLaren's probably pushing them there quite well. But I would say Mercedes right now is in that fight for, the second best team on the grid. And like I said, there were times at the beginning of the season we weren't really sure where Mercedes was going to eventually end up. Some of the early updates that they were bringing to their car wasn't doing enough, wasn't really, pushing the car forward. They were getting very average results throughout the beginning of the season. But as we've gotten into the second half, they're another team that have, really made the changes necessary. And I would give them a B. They're almost there. They're literally almost there, back again, fighting Red Bull for a World Constructors Championship. I think the Drivers' Championship is a little far off and a little ambitious still for Mercedes, but they're definitely starting to move towards getting into 2024 and fighting for that Constructors' Championship. So now moving on to the Williams team. This is another team that has made a big step forward this season. And it's a tale of two drivers. Alex Albon has really been able to perform well this season when Williams has needed him to, has brought out the shock finishes when they've needed it. Logan Sargent scored his first points in the United States. So good job to him. I think this is still a learning process this year for him, and he's really he's finally starting to get a handle on the car. And going into 2024, which I do have to say, I'm glad that Williams decided to stick with Logan Sargent going into 2024. I'm really interested to see what Williams is going to bring to the table in 2024. Are they going to be able to take a bigger step forward than what they have this season, which, quite frankly, I think most in F1 are surprised about, with the chances of them potentially qualifying, top 5, top 10, constantly pushing Q3s, being on the bottom edge of the points. It's really been shocking because I think a lot of people out there did not expect Williams to be, fighting this well and this hard, in the constructor standings and even in the driver standings, with Alexander Albon being able to put up some really good results this season. And I would have to say that they from where we thought Williams was going to be this season, which I think I'm included. I felt like Williams was going to be, pushing 10th place, not really fighting to try to get into ninth. I would give them a solid C, borderline B, if I were to really think about it a little bit. Obviously they're not better than Mercedes, but with what they've been able to do this season, I think while they're not ahead of like the likes of Ferrari and Aston Martin as points go, what they've been able to do compared to what we thought they were going to do was miles better this season. And then finally on the list, it's Red Bull, and I would have to say that they are the A+ team. They've really done a great job this season with Max. I'm still a little hesitant where I'm at with Sergio. I truly think that this is not all Sergio's doing, and I don't think that Sergio is the full blame of what's going on his side of the garage at Red Bull. You have to think about it. Max is the number one driver at Red Bull. When they make updates to their car, or when they change the car with certain, updates, or, when they introduce the 2023 car, it was with Max in mind. It wasn't with Sergio in mind. They wanted to make sure that the car fit well and was going to be able to be driven well by Max Verstappen. And Sergio kind of takes it in the rear end, basically, because they're building a car for Max to be able to have him challenge for drivers' championships. And I understand Max is a once-in-a-lifetime, he's another one of those once-in-a-lifetime talents. Came over to Red Bull and has been producing since day one. So you're going to build the team around him. But now you need to start working on, updating the car to fit the need or fit the wants of Sergio to the extent of that he's going to be able to push Max Verstappen, and you really can truly have two teammates who are going to battle on a constant weekly basis. But guys, that is my tier list. So guys, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of this tier list. Where do you guys have each of these 10 teams? Guys, let me know that in the comment section down below. And as always, slap a like on these videos to help this video get out to more and more Formula One fans. It would absolutely mean the world if you guys can slap that like button for me. And guys, hit the subscribe button if you guys are new to my channel for more daily, weekly Formula One content. Like I said, we're 2 races away from the end of the season, but we need to push. We need to push hard towards the end of the season. We're on that mission to get to 500 subscribers before the end of the year. So please help me out and hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. And guys, for the American F1 fan, I'm Eric Ringel, signing off.